Once upon a time, in a quiet apartment in the middle of Austin, Texas, a young man sat staring at a blank wall. His room was filled with the ghosts of things he had never started. Have you ever looked at the calendar and wondered where the last 5 or even 10 years of your life went? I had one single sentence that completely destroyed my 20s. It wasn't a curse. It wasn't a terrible accident. It was just 3 simple words that we all whisper to ourselves every single day. I'll do it tomorrow. Those 3 words are the most dangerous words in the human language. They feel safe. They feel like a promise. But in reality, they are a thief. They steal your youth, they steal your potential, and they steal your future. This is the story of a man named Chris who lost 10 full years of his life to a day that never actually arrives. If you're sitting there right now, waiting for the perfect time to start your dream, I need you to listen to this very carefully, because your tomorrow might just cost you everything. Our story begins when Chris was 24 years old. He was a bright young guy living in Texas, full of energy, full of ideas, but carrying one massive flaw. He had 0 follow-through. He didn't want to just work a regular 9-to-5 job forever. He wanted to build something real. He wanted to make his mark on the world. He had a list of dreams that he kept in his head. First, he wanted to start a YouTube channel to share his passion for filmmaking. Second, he bought a beautiful acoustic guitar that sat in the corner of his living room because he dreamed of playing music. Third, he wanted to write a science fiction novel. He already had the entire plot figured out. And finally, he wanted to get into the best shape of his life, to finally feel confident when he looked in the mirror. He had all the ingredients for a successful life, but he had absolutely no action. Every single evening after work, Chris would come home feeling tired. He would sit on his couch, look at the dust gathering on his guitar, or look at the blank document on his laptop screen. He felt a little pang of guilt, but then a wave of comfort would wash over him, because he would whisper his favorite phrase, "It's okay. I had a long day. I'll just start tomorrow." Tomorrow became Chris's favorite word. It was a magical place. In his mind, the tomorrow version of himself was a superhero. The tomorrow version of Chris had endless energy. The tomorrow version of Chris never got distracted by social media. The tomorrow version of Chris was disciplined, brave, and focused. By pushing his dreams to tomorrow, Chris got to experience 2 things at the same time. He got the comforting feeling of having big goals, and he got the instant gratification of doing absolutely nothing today. It required no sweat. It risked no failure. It demanded no action. But here is the truth about tomorrow. It is a ghost. You can chase it forever, but you can never actually touch it. When Chris woke up the next morning, it wasn't tomorrow anymore. It was today. And today was always full of the same old excuses, the same old tiredness, and the same old distractions. So he would simply push the deadline back again. I'll do it tomorrow. He didn't realize it yet, but he was building a prison out of his own comfort. One cool, crisp autumn evening, when Chris was 28, he felt an overwhelming sense of anxiety. 4 years had passed since he first came up with his big ideas, and he hadn't achieved a single one. He felt suffocated by his own apartment. To clear his head, he went for a long walk down by the Colorado River. The sun was setting, casting a deep orange and purple glow across the water. As he sat on a wooden bench, watching the river flow, an old man walked up and sat down on the other end of the bench. The man had deep wrinkles around his eyes, but his gaze was incredibly sharp and clear. He looked like someone who had lived 1,000 lives. The old man looked at Chris's slumped shoulders and heavy expression. I see you are carrying something very heavy, young man, the stranger said quietly. Chris sighed, rubbing his face with his hands. It's not baggage or anything like that. It's just my plans, my goals. I have all these things I want to do, but I just haven't found the right time. I'll get around to them tomorrow. The old man let out a soft, sad chuckle. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out two objects. He placed them gently on the wooden bench between them. They were two small, antique clocks. They looked identical at first glance, both made of dark, polished wood with gold hands. But as Chris looked closer, he noticed something strange. These are not ordinary timepieces, the old man said, pointing to the first clock on the left. This is the clock of action. It is a very unique machine. It only ticks when you are actively moving toward your goals. If you are working, writing, practicing, or sweating, it moves. If you stop, it stops instantly. Then the old man pointed to the second clock on the right. And this is the clock of delay. It requires no effort at all. It ticks completely on its own. It ticks when you scroll through your phone. It ticks when you watch TV. It ticks even when you are fast asleep, dreaming about the things you want to do. Chris looked at the two clocks, fascinated. Every human being is given these two clocks at birth, the old man explained, standing up from the bench. They live inside your mind, and you must choose, every single hour of every single day, which clock you are going to water with your attention. Be very careful which one you choose. Before Chris could ask any questions, the old man turned and walked away, disappearing into the evening shadows of the park. Chris looked down at the bench, but the physical clocks were gone. Yet, deep inside his chest, he could suddenly hear a faint distant sound. Tick, tick, tick. When Chris got home that night, he felt a brief spark of motivation. He looked at his guitar, he looked at his laptop, but the couch looked so soft. The television was right there. He told himself, wow, that old man was deep. I really need to change my life. I'll make a full schedule and start fresh tomorrow morning. Chris chose the easy path. Without realizing it, he began to water the clock of delay. For the next week, Chris fell right back into his old routine. He woke up late, rushed to work, came home exhausted, and spent his evenings scrolling through short videos on his phone for hours. Every time he picked up his phone instead of his guitar, he whispered his favorite lie, tomorrow. Inside his mind, the clock of delay was absolutely thriving. It began to tick louder. Tick, tick, tick. At first, it was just a background noise. But as weeks turned into months, the sound grew heavier. Chris started to feel a constant underlying sense of stress. It was a strange kind of weight right in the middle of his chest. It made him feel tired even when he slept for 8 hours. It made him irritable. It made him feel guilty every time he tried to relax and enjoy himself. Months quickly turned into years. The passage of time in your 20s is terrifyingly fast. One day, you are 24, and the next day, you wake up and you are 32. Chris looked around his apartment on his 32nd birthday, and a wave of pure horror hit him. Absolutely nothing had changed. No videos had ever been posted to YouTube. The guitar was still sitting in the exact same corner, its strings now rusty and dead. The novel was still just a blank document titled New Project. His body was softer, his energy was lower, and his youth was slipping through his fingers like sand. His brilliant ideas had stayed exactly that, just ideas. Chris walked over to the mirror and looked at himself. He saw wrinkles starting to form around his eyes. He saw a sadness in his expression. He felt an immense weight pressing down on his shoulders. The clock of delay was no longer a small timepiece inside his mind. It had grown into the size of a massive, heavy concrete boulder, chaining his ankles to the floor. He felt completely paralyzed. He wanted to move. He wanted to change. But the weight of 8 years of procrastination was simply too heavy to lift. The clock of action had stopped ticking entirely. It felt dead. That evening, Chris couldn't breathe inside his apartment. The walls felt like they were closing in on him. He ran out of the building and drove down to the exact same spot by the Colorado River. It was raining lightly now, the cold water mixing with the tears streaming down his face. He dropped to his knees on the wet grass and broke down completely. He cried for the lost years. He cried for the version of himself that he had murdered with his own laziness. "Why did you do this to me?" Chris shouted into the empty air, thinking of the old man. "Why did you give me this curse? It's too heavy. I can't move anymore." Through the sound of the falling rain, Chris heard a familiar pair of footsteps. He looked up, and there, holding a black umbrella, was the old man. He looked exactly the same as he did years ago. "I didn't do this to you, Chris," the old man said softly, his voice full of deep empathy. "I didn't give you a curse. I simply gave you a mirror so you could see reality." "But the weight is too much," Chris sobbed. "The clock of delay is crushing me. I can't start my channel now. I'm 32. It's too late to learn guitar. I've wasted my prime years." The old man knelt down in the grass next to him. "The clock of delay is heavy because you have fed it every day for 10 years. It grows automatically. It feeds on your comfort, your fear, and your excuses. It doesn't require any strength to grow, but it requires all your strength to carry." "But what about the clock of action?" Chris whispered, his voice trembling. "It's broken. It won't tick anymore." "It is not broken," the old man replied gently. "It is just waiting for you. The clock of delay grows by itself, but the clock of action requires a conscious choice. It needs you to choose it every single day, even when you are tired, even when you are scared, and even when you think it won't matter." The old man reached out and touched Chris's chest. "You cannot get back the last 10 years, Chris. They are gone forever. But you still have the next 10 years. You can either carry the boulder of regret, or you can face the pain of discipline. Both are painful, but only one will set you free." Chris sat in the rain for a long time after the old man left. He realized that nobody was coming to save him. There was no perfect tomorrow version of him that would magically appear and fix his life. There was only him, right now, in the mud. He stood up, wiped the tears from his eyes, and walked back to his car. When he got home, he didn't sit on the couch. He didn't look at his phone. He walked straight over to his dusty laptop. He opened the blank document. He didn't try to write a masterpiece. He didn't try to write a whole chapter. He just wrote one single, simple sentence. It was hard. It felt awkward. His brain screamed at him to stop and watch TV. But as his fingers hit the keys, deep inside his soul, a tiny, fragile sound broke the silence. Tick. Let's fast forward 1 year. Chris was now 33. If you walked into his apartment, you would see a completely different environment. The acoustic guitar was no longer in the corner. It was resting on a stand right next to his desk, looking worn and well used. Chris had made a commitment to start incredibly small. He stopped trying to change his entire life in one day. Instead, he promised himself just 10 minutes of action every single day. 10 minutes of writing a video script. 10 minutes of practicing basic chords on the guitar. 10 minutes of reading. 10 minutes of doing push-ups on his living room floor. In the beginning, it was incredibly boring. It was slow. He felt foolish. But he refused to let the clock of delay take over. Every time his brain whispered, "You can do the rest tomorrow," Chris would say, "No, I am doing 10 minutes right now." And those 10 minutes began to compound. 1 year later, Chris's YouTube channel about storytelling didn't just exist. It had hit 50,000 subscribers. He had built a real community of people who loved his work. That summer, he stood up in front of 200 people at his younger sister's wedding, held his guitar with confident hands, and played her favorite song perfectly. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. And on his desk, his science fiction novel wasn't a blank document anymore. It was over 50,000 words long, more than half done. He was still busy. He still got tired after his day job. But the heavy, suffocating weight in his chest was completely gone. He felt light. He felt energized. He felt alive. One evening, Chris was walking by the river again, just enjoying the cool breeze. He saw the old man sitting on the exact same wooden bench, watching the water flow. Chris walked over with a bright, confident smile and sat down next to him. The old man turned, looked at Chris's bright eyes and strong posture, and smiled warmly. "You look much lighter, my friend. Tell me, where is that massive clock of delay that you were dragging around?" Chris smiled, looking out at the river. "I buried it," he said. "I buried it under a mountain of daily action." "Good," the old man said, nodding his head wisely. "That is a great victory. But I must give you one final warning, Chris. Never forget that the clock of delay never truly dies. It doesn't go away forever. It just sits quietly in the dark, waiting. It is patient. It is listening. And the very second you stop watering your action, the very moment you tell yourself that you can just start tomorrow, it will wake up again, and it will start to grow. The truth is, this story isn't just about Chris. This story is about you. Right now, as you sit here listening to my voice, you have those exact same two clocks ticking inside your mind. The clock of delay is ticking right now for free. It doesn't ask anything from you. It loves your excuses. It loves your comfort. It loves your social media feed. And if you let it tick, it will quietly turn your days into months, and your months into years, until you wake up a decade from now, wondering where your entire youth went. The clock of action is sitting there too, but it is silent. It is waiting for you to make a choice. It doesn't care how small your first step is. It doesn't care if you only have 10 minutes. It just wants you to start today. I want to ask you the one question that I desperately wish someone had asked me when I was 24 years old. Look at your life. Look at your dreams. And look at your habits right now. Which clock are you watering today? Don't let tomorrow steal your today. Click the subscribe button, close this video, and go spend 10 minutes on your dream right now.